We're right with you. The Morning Majority, 5 to 9 on 630 WMAL.
8:37 on WMAL. Happy Monday morning to you. It's a steamy day here in Washington, D.C. Going to be a steamy week as we continue with the debt negotiations as well. Should be fun. Joined now by Senator Mike Lee, Republican from the great state of Utah. Good morning, Senator. How are you?
Good morning to you. It's great to be with you.
All right, your book, The Freedom Agenda, Why a Balanced Budget Amendment is Necessary to Restore Constitutional Government. You tell me why. Why is it necessary?
Well, government acts at the expense of individual liberty. Every time it acts or it expands, it erodes our freedom. The only way to make sure that it doesn't occupy more of our lives than it's supposed to, which I believe the federal government has been doing in recent decades, is to limit the amount of money that it has access to, and specifically to limit the amount of money that it can borrow, to restrict Congress's borrowing power, which has been so severely abused. Our freedom, yours and mine, and that of our children and grandchildren, born and unborn, depends on this very thing. That's what the Freedom Agenda is about. In order to protect our freedom, we need a balanced budget amendment. This book helps explain how we got off course and how we can get back on track.
Why would this stop Congress from taxing, or could it stop Congress from taxing? I'm just thinking to myself that, hey, this could give Democrats a chance to say, hey, but under law we got to balance this budget, and the only way we're going to do this is to raise taxes.
Well, as I explained in the Freedom Agenda, the proper approach to a balanced budget amendment is to contain a supermajority requirement in it for raising taxes, saying that if Congress wants to tax more of our money, more of our income, it needs to have a supermajority to do that. That would make it possible, but still somewhat difficult and unusual for Congress to be able to raise taxes. That's all explained in the Freedom Agenda.
All right. Well, it sounds great, and I'm sure there are a lot of Republicans and conservatives would go along with this, but is there any chance of this thing actually passing?
Well, I believe that if we put the Democrats in a position of our saying we will raise the debt limit, but only if we pass this balanced budget amendment. The Democrats have already gone on record repeatedly saying that financial Armageddon will immediately ensue unless we raise it. And if that's the case, and if they really believe that, then they can muster the votes that we need in order to get this passed.
Senator Lee, you are joined in your passion for the balanced budget amendment by Senator Orrin Hatch, the senior Republican senator from the state of Utah. And yet there's a lot has been made of the fact that you don't intend to endorse his reelection effort. And I'm just kind of trying to figure out, what is the bad blood between you two?
Look, there is absolutely no bad blood. He's a friend. I've known him most of my life, and he's been great to work with since I came to the Senate, and I've known and liked him since long before I got here.
Well, then why wouldn't you endorse somebody that you consider a friend and somebody with whom you have a warm relationship?
Well, one of the people who's regarded as most likely to challenge him, who's one of our congressmen, Jason Chaffetz from Utah, is also a longtime friend. This is one of those circumstances where I'd rather not get involved in a battle between two friends. I'll let the voters of Utah work that out.
But Senator Hatch has been a good friend of you and your family. He's helped members of your family in many, many, many ways. You share this common passion about the budget. And I've been in this town for about 26 years, and I have seen time after time after time where Senator Orrin Hatch has been one of the leading proponents, especially in his service on the Judiciary Committee, where he stood up for a lot of judicial nominees that otherwise would have gone down in flames had it not been for his efforts. I just don't understand why you would take a guy like that who has that kind of record, that kind of reputation, that kind of friendship with your family, and then decide that he's not somebody you could support.
Well, look, again, I love the guy. He's a great man, and the things that you've mentioned are true. And I'm sure that those will all serve him well with the voters of Utah. But again, we're talking about a possible battle between two friends, and whenever that happens, I think it's best to let the voters decide it on their own, and they can make that decision. They would make that decision with or without my endorsement, going to one or the other.
Well, let me ask you about the cut, cap, and balance. You guys are taking a vote on this week. What is actually in that? And I assume the amendment vote is separate. Like the actual balanced budget amendment is a whole separate deal.
Yes, it's separate, but it's a trigger point. Let me explain. So the Cut, Cap, Balance Act, the one that I proposed in the Senate and the one that's been proposed in the House, brings about some immediate short-term spending cuts to discretionary spending in the fiscal year 2012 budget. It also contains some intermediate-term statutory spending caps, sort of like the Graham-Rudman-Hollings Act back in the 1980s. But it says that we won't raise the debt limit until both of those things happen and until Congress has passed a balanced budget amendment and submitted to the states for ratification. So it references the balanced budget amendment's passage as a trigger point for raising the debt limit. We're willing to raise it, but not until we fix the underlying problem. And as I explained in the Freedom Agenda, the underlying problem can't be fixed without an amendment to the Constitution.
Well, I follow this stuff a lot, and I'm still getting a little confused because there are a lot of offerings on the table from Republicans, exactly zero from Obama, but that's another issue. Do you feel like maybe Republicans' message is hampered by a lack of clarity, that maybe people are getting a little confused about what's out there?
Perhaps, and I've been concerned about that lack of clarity, and that's exactly why I decided to file this bill a couple weeks ago. We now have clarity, and I can now say with confidence that this is not only the best proposal out there for addressing the debt limit issue, it is the only proposal out there for addressing the debt limit issue. It's the only legislation that's been filed and that has substantial public support. We've got 37 co-sponsors on this bill in the Senate. We've got about 100 in the House, and keeping in mind that both versions were filed just days ago.
Now, the House is going to take this up in the next couple of days. Will it even get to a vote in the Senate? I mean, can you even bring it to the Senate floor for an actual vote?
Well, once it passes in the House, I believe it will be difficult. I would believe it would be completely indefensible of Senator Reid, Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, not to bring it up in the Senate, especially when it's been the Democrats who have been banging the drum so loudly about the fact that financial Armageddon will immediately ensue if we don't raise the debt limit. Again, this is the only proposal right now that's gotten any degree of public support. If they want to raise it, they should go along with it, especially considering that the American people overwhelmingly support a balanced budget amendment.
All right. Are you concerned that there won't be a deal by August 2nd, the debt ceiling isn't raised, and we might have some serious financial problems worse off than we already have right now?
Well, sure. I think everyone is concerned about that, and no one wants to see us in a position in which the federal government's not able to pay its bills. But we ought to be equally concerned. We ought to be even more concerned about what happens if we raise the debt limit without any permanent structural binding spending reform in place. And that's what this does. And that's what I explained in the Freedom Agenda, is how Americans can reclaim their freedom and reclaim America's prosperity by putting us back on course.
All right, Senator Lee. Good to have you on the program. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. It's great to be with you.
Mike Lee from